Okay, for the second half of the presentation, we'll discuss the biblical view and what our proper response should be as Christians. I hope you enjoy it. From the naturalistic worldview, you have a philosophical view. And a philosophy is derived in this system over here on the left side of the chart. The philosophy is derived from observations. That's naturalism. It has to come from that because that's human behavior. We can observe human behavior, we can see things as they develop, and we can draw conclusions, and we can even make science about it. This is where sociological studies and technocratic studies interface and kind of become one. And philosophy in this system, religion is an outgrowth of philosophy, not the other way around. Religion comes from it because religion becomes a necessary part of human existence as the naturalistic person observes these things. And so religion is derived from philosophy. And in this system, you have ethics that are informed by the philosophical and religious base that are based on nature and science, natural reasoning. Politics then are derived from the ethics that the people in the system hold, and policy comes out of the politics. Now, over on the other side, where revelation is the epistemological base, and that's where biblical Christianity is, where each of us are, is that what we believe is true is because God has revealed it to us. And there's two types of revelation. There's what's called general revelation, which is nature, which is an understanding of nature. It's the observation of nature. So it's not like we reject natural observations in science. We don't reject those things. We consider them part of God's revelation. But they are subservient to special revelation, which is God's revealed truth in His Word, in Old Testament, New Testament times through the prophets and the apostles. That God reveals truth to us. Okay, and so that revealed truth, in many ways, supersedes the natural revelation, the general revelation. But that is the basis. And in this system, the metaphysical idea, where revelation is the epistemological base, is twoism, not oneism. And twoism is not the same thing as dualism. Okay, dualism, I'm not going to talk a whole lot about the dualism side of things, but twoism is different from dualism. Twoism is the idea that God and creation are separate. God created everything with the word of His mouth. He does not exist inside His creation. He's not part of His creation. He can come into His creation. He can manifest within His creation, but it's because He made it. And He is the author. He's not subject to the laws of creation that we are all subject to, because we are part of creation. We are all created beings. And the dog and the cat and the chair and all these things are also created beings, but they're not God. And like one of the things that Jenny, we had a lecturer at Burning Man one year who gave us all these reasons for why it's saying that, you are God and I am God, and we are God, and there is no sin, and we are all one, and we are God. And the lady sitting next to Jenny looked at Jenny and said, I know I'm not God. Because we understand that. We understand that fundamentally we know that we're not God. But the system of oneism says that we are. In biblical Christianity, we recognize we are not God. God is separate from His creation. The biblical worldview is where that leads to. Truth, what we interpret, we understand through the biblical worldview. And this world is constantly trying to undermine that biblical worldview and tell you that you should be believing things based on the naturalistic worldview. And they appeal to that side of Christianity where we recognize what's going on in nature, and they try and get you over to this side. In this system, this is in particular something that was really helped broaden my understanding. Religion doesn't grow out of a philosophy. Religion is revealed. Religion grows out of the revealed understanding of God's Word. And philosophy grows out of religion, because we develop a philosophy on the basis of what we understand in religious principles, in the things that God has revealed to us. That's the opposite of this other side, where religion, if it's necessary, grows out of philosophy under the oneness side. But in the Christian side, philosophy is what comes out of religion. And then ethics are formed on the basis of biblical doctrine, on the values that we hold. Politics are based on biblical values, and the things we believe that policy should be based on comes out of politics, based on biblical values. And you think about where this is. Think about all the political discourse that we're seeing all over the place. And what are people arguing about? They're arguing about policy, and politics. Sometimes they argue about ethics here and there. And every once in a while you might even get discussions on philosophy. But for the most part, all the arguments and everything are in this divide. And where's the real source of the divide? It's all the way up there at the top. It's all the way up there where at the very beginning, people that are of this world, in the earthly city, they're basing what they believe is true on empirical natural observations. This whole system on the left side here is deeply embedded in all of Western society, especially. It's in every society. There are trillions and trillions of dollars invested in corporations and in government programs and policies in the United Nations and in everything to keep this system intact, this left side system, because there is a belief embedded within this that we need to all put aside our differences and come together as one, and they have chosen this side. And the one thing that gets in their way, we've heard it multiple times, are the people that are on this side, us, people that believe this other side. Now, we're not going away, and they're not going away. We have to coexist. But just keep in mind, your children, your coworkers, this is where they're thinking. They don't realize that it goes all the way back to there. But if you learn and you study how to understand that their mindset is coming from this angle, you'll be better equipped and better able to speak to them from a biblical worldview. And you get them back to that empirical side, to understand. It actually doesn't make sense for naturalism to be the only source of truth. And then they try and go to something else. Because our sin nature makes us not want to have Christianity as the base. So, this is, I want to show you some pictures of Burning Man, where we go to Burning Man every year. Now, this is at night. Burning Man, the reason why we go to Burning Man, because when I went to the Eclipse event with Carl, and he invited Jenny and I to go to Burning Man. And at first, when I went there, Jenny said to me, she said, "You can go, but you're not allowed to like it." So I came back and I said, "We're going to Burning Man." She was like, "Oh no." And then she did all the work to make sure we went out there and survived. And so Burning Man, if you talk about the earthly city and the heavenly city, Burning Man is a microcosm of this entire civilizational idea on the left side of that chart that I was just showing you. It is 80,000 people, 80,000 people coming together in the desert in Nevada every year for 9 days of sensory overload and workshops and seminars, world-changing conversations. And this just shows some of the images. This is the man. You see the man from anywhere in the city. That's what the man looks like at night. The temple is an area where people go to pray and meditate. And they have these party areas, like the octopus cart. And some of you have seen this picture of this thing. It's kind of iconic for Burning Man. And then just an image of what it's like being out there in the dusk when the dust is out there. What it looks like from the air, 10 square miles of this city out there in the middle of the desert. The center part is where the man is, and the temple is out further than what they call it. You see this pentagonal fence, they call it the trash fence. You can go anywhere out there, except you're not allowed to go here. They have a little airport. We go out there, out in the desert. You go out there at night, see the stars. It's pretty amazing event. Getting there, people go there. There's so many people that go there. We were in line for about 4.5 hours this time getting in. Right after we got in, and got our tent set up. It started to rain, and the people that were in line, they shut the gates because you can't drive. It'll destroy your vehicle. You're driving in because it's really fine dust. It's not actually sand, and it'll destroy. So they shut the gate. Nobody could go in, and they had to wait there for like 17 hours. So in line, and they'll do it. This is what it looks like and more about what it looks like at night. Hi, y'all.
Sorry.
Okay. This whole system is designed to convert people. They want to convert people to this new way of thinking. They call it spirituality without religion. They're really trying to convert people to this vision of what they believe the future of humanity is going to be. And this is how conversion happens. You start off with some people that have church trauma, or they're just disillusioned with life. They're struggling with whatever, disillusionment. They're seeking something new. They believe in evolution, and that's very, very important. It's one of the reasons why they so strongly and so vehemently guard the doctrine of evolution that it absolutely has to be true with such intense emotion. Connection, people try and connect. They get an idea, hey, it starts with marijuana usually as a gateway drug, to connection through technology, because this idea technology is going to unite the world. And of course, not all technology is bad, we know that. Then they go and attend an event, either Burning Man or one of the regional events, or like the Eclipse Festival, and they get caught up in it. And at the event, there's all this energy and excitement, and they feel the flow and the sensory overload. And then at the seminar, they have these, or at the event, they have these seminars. They have doctrine. You don't think of it. At Burning Man, they have these events where people come and speak to us on cryptocurrency, on artificial intelligence, on global governance issues, on the future of humanity, and how to unite religions, and how to put aside our differences, and all these different things. Paul Romer was a World Bank chief economist and also a Nobel Prize winner. Went to Burning Man, I think in 2019, wrote an article in the New York Times about how Burning Man is a model city for the future of humanity. They get this doctrine that is inundated on them as they go there, and the idea is then to spread that doctrine back home. When they come back home, to spread that doctrine. Burning Man has been going on since 1986, 87. They probably didn't really start using it to spread the doctrine until a few years, maybe 10 years after it got started. But I mean, there's been 30 years of this being part of inundating our culture and our way of life with these ideas. Then they get experiential flow through music, art, meditations, drugs, sometimes illicit sex. All these things, they're all part of this idea that we need to come together, transcend the limits of humanity, and become one with the future of humanity. And all that together transforms the mind into the new faith, new belief system. Which is why when we meet people and they say, I went to vacation Bible school as a kid, I grew up in church, my parents homeschooled me, now I'm a Buddhist, or now I do this, now I follow Odin, or now I follow Anubis, whatever it might be. This is where it comes from. Now just some more pictures, what it looks like out there. You feel like you're out there on the plains of Shinar, like in Babylon, out there, out in the desert. That's what it looks like up close. Here is the seminar on being led by the Black Rock Observatory people. I'll just tell you Robin Newhouse, PhD, worked at CERN, Particle Accelerator Collider, particle physics. Official from the Los Angeles Griffin Observatory, I can't remember the exact name. And PhD scientist, has written over 100 peer-reviewed papers on astrophysics, and it works for SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. His name is Dr. Orkhan Umarhan. The guy furthest on the right, Chinese guy, he's a kind of an exchange scientist, works in New York, working on collaborating with American astrophysics and research in the astronomy area. PhD. These are not fringe people. Burning Man is not a bunch of hippies going out in the desert partying, getting high, and then falling over. These are high-level thinkers on all kinds of stuff. And one of the reasons why I think it's so good what y'all are doing at UATX is we need to, as Christians, we can't back away from the study of these things, from the study of science, and we need to maintain that we still have a voice and that we can be involved in these things. Some of the other images. Hindu and Buddhist, a lot of the art, there's a lot of art there. Art at Burning Man, that's kind of a Hindu prayer woman sculpture. Shamanism, there's a lot about shamanism. They always exalt shamanism like it's such a wonderful thing. This is an Aztec dance festival where they pay homage to the god of the earth, the god of the sky, and the gods of the four cardinal directions. And they promote shamanism as this wonderful, positive thing that's going to help humanity because it's another aspect of how we interact with these luminous beings in higher dimensions. Not at all like the shamanism that we experienced when we lived overseas, living with actual shamans that actually practice shamanism. Now, they did practice their shamanism to try and get power for medicine to heal people when they were sick, but they also very much would try and cast spells to kill their enemies or to curse their enemies. So shamanism is not what they're saying it is, but that's what they're promoting. We had our own workshop. We had a little camp there. We called our camp the Camp of the Unknown God, based on Paul's activities in Acts chapter 17 at the Areopagus. And we had, under our canopy, where we had people come in, we had a workshop that we called Stories of the Supernatural. I would encourage anyone to go get our podcast because I recorded it. It's on there. When we recorded the stories, we shared about some of the things that we experienced in the Philippines. And we also shared, it led to a discussion of what does the Bible say about the supernatural. And we had one guy who had a very, very clear profession of faith at that workshop. And they were all just so excited because we were presenting that God is real. Not like what the doctrine that Burning Man presents, that God and nature are one. That God is real. He's separate, but he's real and he loves us. The end of Burning Man, they burn the man, and there's a big party, and everyone goes and runs around in circles as the coals go down. They have this big party. And people go home, and they carry their experience back home, and they tell everybody that from their places back home what it was like. They get other people who want to go, and they spread the word. So what is Burning Man about? It's about energy, flow. These are some buzzwords that you'll hear a lot when you're there. Energy flow, no rules, spirituality without religion. That's one of the things they talk about. They talk about transcending the limits of humanity. It's a representation of the earthly city, the kingdoms of this world, the impulse of man. What is the impulse of man? The impulse of man, pride, achievement, great things, all kinds of things like that. It's not just Western society, but this is something that exists all throughout human history, as Augustine wrote about. But it really harkens back to Genesis chapter 3, verse 5, where the serpent said to Eve, when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God. That's what Burning Man is about. Now, not everything there is bad, of course, just like not everything here in the city that you live in Austin, is bad. It's a human city. It's one that they construct, and they do it as a model. And we, as Christians, we go there and we live within the city, just like you do here, and just like we do where we live. We live within the city. We live in parallel, and we represent Christ to the people around us. We represent the kingdom of God as Christ's ambassadors. And we practice cultural diplomacy, not culture war, cultural diplomacy, to bring them into an understanding of who God is. Burning Man has a theme every year. They call it in 2026, their theme is Axis Mundi, or Mundi, Axis Mundi. Axis Mundi, which means the center of the world. You can see what it says. In nearly every culture on earth, people have imagined a center point for their existence, a celestial column that connects us with powers greater than ourselves. They're calling Burning Man, for the first time, they have a theme every year. It was Curiouser and Curiouser. It was Tomorrow Today. Next year, it's Axis Mundi. And what they're saying is this is the center of the earth. It's the center of the idea. And that's very significant. And you think about it, if Burning Man is a microcosm of this city, of this city of earth, the earthly city that Augustine talked about, the kingdom of this world, Burning Man is a microcosm. And now they're saying that it's the center of the earth. And that's what the theme means. So the thing that we have to understand is Burning Man really is only one representation of multiple competing worldviews in something that is even broader than that, what we're calling the cult of global empire. This is something that Augustine also recognized. It's part of the impulse of man. It is whatever this earthly city ends up becoming, the cult of global empire, the desire for man to achieve. The competing ideas on the world stage, this is one of them, the Re-enchantment worldview. Burning Man Paganicon is a pagan conference that we went to. Psychedelic science and psychedelic advocacy. Space exploration. And again, I want to emphasize, not all of that's bad. I mean, there's legitimate pursuits in that. But UFO belief, the popular narratives, international citizenship. Here's something that I would challenge everyone to just talk to people. Ask them, do you think of yourself as a global citizen first? Or as a citizen of Texas first? Or as a citizen of America first? Just what is someone who doesn't know that you've been thinking about these things? Ask them that and see what they say. I'd be very interested to know. I think there's been a tremendous amount of effort to educate people into thinking of themselves as international citizens, global citizens first, before citizens of this country. So another competing worldview that's looking to dominate, and this is where the connection to the geopolitics, what's driving geopolitical tensions, is the Chinese destiny and dominance worldview. They believe that it's their destiny to rule the world. It comes from an ancient concept, all under heaven, related to the ancient concept of the mandate of heaven. And they are emerging from the century of humiliation. And I heard this a lot in security circles, hearing them talk about this. It's our time to rise up and lead the world. Not rule the world, but lead the world. So the Russian worldview, Alexander Dugin is Vladimir Putin's main philosopher, and he holds to a belief, basically, and I'm not an expert in this, but basically, from what I understand, it's basically that every ethnic group has a natural religion that they should adhere to. And this is a big part of why they felt threatened by what was happening in Ukraine, why they wanted to invade. So they felt like by Ukraine becoming more aligned with Western Europe, Ukraine was becoming more aligned with the Re-enchantment worldview. Now, they wouldn't have articulated it that way, but there's a sense that they're feeling like they're moving away from Russian culture, from the Russian idea. So now this worldview also has begun to take some level of dominance in places where Russia works in Africa. We saw that in security circles also, as multiple different countries in the Sahel have had coups. There was even one this morning where there was an attempted coup that, as far as we know so far, has failed in Benin. But the idea is that Russian intelligence has been working in these countries to encourage them in this kind of activity. And then the fourth worldview is the Muslim worldview, which says that all the world will be under Islam, and to wage jihad and expand through immigration and trade, any means necessary until the return of the Mahdi. And the Muslim world, at some level, is feeling a sense of a disquieting feeling because they don't have a seat of power right now. They don't have a caliphate. But that is, again, in their minds, at least Muslims that have a strong sense of their religion do believe that all the world will come under the domination of Islam. All these worldviews, they don't change unless the world goes through some kind of major crisis period. This is where we come out of this and we understand. And the reason for studying these things is because if you understanding, as I talked about getting religion and getting understanding, if you understand these things, it helps to understand what our place is in the world, and it helps to relate to the people that are struggling to understand, feel like the world is going in all the wrong directions. But these changes, the changes in thought, broad changes in thought, epochs and epistemologies. In 313 AD, the epoch of Christendom began, kind of officially, when Constantine declared Christianity a legal religion in the Roman Empire. And the epistemology, and then it became the favored status, I think it was in 380 or so, it became the official religion. And the epistemology went from paganism to Christian revelation, but it was what the church said, and it took centuries to develop that. But that happened at this period of turmoil. It didn't happen just in 313 AD. It took 150, 200 years for that change to fully manifest. Then for 1,500 years, we were under the epoch of Christendom, and then the Enlightenment period and the Renaissance then led into this period of time where there was the Festival of Liberty and Reason in Paris, in which the humanists declared humanity free from the shackles of the church. And they were intent on pursuing a naturalistic determined epistemology. This is where the epoch of modernity really began. And what did it take to fully establish that? The American Revolution and the Napoleonic Wars. Great turmoil in the 19th century and the American Civil War. In the late 1960s, this waxed and waned because people started to feel like modernity gave us 2 industrial wars in which we slaughtered each other on an industrial scale, and the Cold War, in which if the button is pushed and we got a nuclear war, we're all gonna die. And you're saying that life has no meaning because everything has to be naturalistically determined. And so they're saying, no, it's got to be something else. So they went to postmodernism. But postmodernism doesn't have a consistent framework of epistemology. Postmodernism is all questions and no answers. Postmodernism says, if you say that you have an exclusive truth claim, you're just trying to make some kind of power play over me. And so that can't last. That's a transition period into a new thing. And this new worldview that started to become dominant, which we saw growing up as secularism and New Age, now it's developed a collective sense and a great momentum and festivals and all kinds of things. And it's become a new dominant worldview. But it can't fully entrench without the crisis that happens. And this is where I want to talk about fourth turning, which some of y'all asked about. And so I'm bringing a ton of these things in. I'd highly recommend reading this book. The Fourth Turning is here. Neil Howe, he's a demographer. The original Fourth Turning book was written in 1997. This was written in 2022. And what the Fourth Turning is basically that every human lifespan, every 80 to 100 years, there's some kind of crisis period. And the reason it happens, the reason it's called the Fourth Turning, is because there's 4 generations. A generation is roughly 20 to 25 years. And every 4 generations, a new generation comes of age, just like we all go through basically 4 phases of life in our lives. A new generation comes of age, and it turns over. And in the 4th generation, all the people that survived the last crisis have all died off. By the time the 4th generation comes around and things get divided and everything gets overturned. And going back 500 years in Anglo-American history, we have had a major crisis at the end of every 4th generation. The cycle started with the War of the Roses. That put the Tudor dynasty on the throne. And the word seculum just means a human lifespan. It's kind of a Latin term. It's one human lifespan. Over the time of the Tudors, at the end of the time of the Tudors, Queen Elizabeth I was on the throne, and the Spanish Armada tried to invade. Major crisis, existential crisis. 100 years later, Britain was going through another crisis. And they had already started colonizing the New World, but they had to figure out what was going to happen with their government, whether the kings were divine and all these kinds of things. And so they went through the Glorious Revolution. The revolutionary, 100 years later, almost 90 years later, was the American Revolutionary War period, where the colonists in our country We're determining if we had the right of self-determination. The Civil War happened about 80 years later, from the midpoint of that, in which we were dealing with what form of government and who's going to rule this new nation, this new democratic experiment. And coming out of that, we went into the industrial age, the era of the great powers, and then we had the Great Depression. The Great Depression was a major crisis. And at the end of the Great Depression, we went through World War II. We see how all these things came together. And now here we are, 80 years later, right in the middle of another crisis. We are living through it right now. That's the thing that I think is another thing that's really important to understand. The things that are set in motion, the sociological forces that we see and geopolitical forces that we see at play in the world around us are not going away. It takes time. The crisis period doesn't last just a few days or a few months. The crisis period always lasts several years. The only time where it was particularly short was the American Civil War. There were reasons for that. And when we come out of these crisis periods, usually coming out of these crisis periods, there is a period where we regroup and come together and unify, and things get okay again, so to speak. But I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that are affecting the crisis period that we're all going through right now. And I don't want you to despair, because I still have tremendous hope. But understanding, there is a point in understanding these things that you might have to go through a bit of some spiritual reckoning and become okay with it. We're going through multiple cycles right now. We're going through a technological innovation cycle. Started with cryptocurrency, and it's led into artificial intelligence. Every 50 years there's some kind of major cycle. A climate change cycle, and this is actually caused by, as far as we understand, naturalistic forces. Sunspot cycle, which happens every 11 years, leads to weather volatility, and the Gleisberg cycle is an astronomical cycle. 90 years ago was the Dust Bowl. Okay. That was a Gleisberg cycle caused crisis. And that's part of what's causing weather volatility today. We go through, there's a revolutionary cycle that happens every 250 years. Don't know exactly what the causes are of that time period, but it seems 250 years ago is the American Revolution, and 250 years before that was the Protestant Reformation. That's converging at this time right now. The fourth turning cycle, which I already talked about, that happens every 80 to 100 years. In 2025, we had something very interesting happen in India in March of this year, the Mahakumbh Mela. And in particular, that was one that happens it was a particular episode of that happens only every 144 years. Had to do with the planetary alignment. 2/3 of India's 1 billion people gathered together and celebrated the Mahakumbh Mela for like a month in India. That's incredible. This is the largest human festival, as far as we know, the largest human festival attended in all of human history. 666 million people went to that festival. And we are also at a 500-year shift in human history. And what this is for the first time in 500 years, the Eastern powers have greater technology than the Western powers. The West does not have technological supremacy over the East today. We do not have it. That's very significant as well. And so all of these things are together, since they're all converging at the same time, they're converging in such a way that it's possible the way we will emerge from this cycle, which we don't know, is not necessarily in this great, wonderful, unified system. We might just kind of muddle out of it. And I want to bring up a historical example of when this happened. In 133 BC, in Rome, this is the days before Rome was an empire. They were a republic. They defeated Carthage in the Second Punic War. It threatened the very existence of Rome. When they defeated Carthage, they went into a period of a seculum. And over that period of time, they had the Jurgethine War, which did not threaten Rome's existence, but it was painful for them. And then in 133 BC, kind of right at the beginning, the end of the third turning, right at the beginning of the fourth turning, Tiberius Gracchus was elected tribune. He had a brother named Gaius Gracchus who was also elected tribune later on. They implemented a land reform bill that became a catalyst to a fourth turning crisis. The reforms that they wanted to bring about, because of what was going on, and the Roman society had already lost so much of its civic virtue, the reforms that they were trying to implement were so disruptive to Roman society that it sparked a series of civil conflicts, 100 years of civil war, so that finally in 27 BC, after 100 years of civil war, Augustus Caesar emerged as emperor. Rome was finally brought back to a condition of stability, and there was nobody left alive who'd experienced the functioning of the Roman Republic before 133 BC. Nobody knew how to make it work. So they were no longer a republic. They were now an empire, an authoritarian system. The republic was gone. The empire was in its place. Now, why is it important to understand these things? Well, for one, if we as believers understand these things, and we can have a settled peace, we can know that our hope is not in this life, and that what God is telling us, the way God wants us to interact with the people around us, they need to look to us. We will be salt and light when they see that we don't have fear, when they have fear. When they see that we are not getting carried away by the difficult things that are going on in the world around us, whether it's local or whether it's international, we know that our God is in control. We know that our God loves us. And we know that we have an eternal destiny that's certain. And we can show them also, you can show them, go through, you can look through, you can study that diagram and try and understand where they're coming from. Is that naturalistic belief system that they follow does not have any unity like they hope it does. They all get in fights with each other. They continue to, because the Chinese system, the Russian system, the Muslim system, the Buddhist and Hindu systems, all of those are based on the naturalistic worldview. And they're not unified, and they're not going to be unified. As much as they promote these ideas of unity, we as believers can be, because we have Christ in us. It's just like what he was talking about this morning in the sermon, that we have a peace that passes all understanding. That was such a good message. It's really true. We have a peace that that they cannot match. And they're going to try and solve these problems because God has imprinted his image on all of us, and we seek to try and do that. But our opportunity, what we need to teach, what we need to live as an example for our coworkers. We're also, most of us in this are at an age where we are the leaders now. In this room, most of you all are leaders among your peers. You're going to be looked up to when they see, and especially when they see that you don't have fear, that you have peace, that these things don't faze you. That's what's going to draw them in and draw them into Christ. And we can form the remnant body of believers that will be in for, who knows, maybe Jesus is coming back in our lifetime. Maybe it'll be one more seculum. We don't know. But if it is one more second, we will form the basis of the body of the remnant believers that will be representatives of Jesus, representatives of God to a lost and dying world. And we know that our salvation is not salvation from extinction because we're worried about an alien species coming to invade Earth. But our salvation is being saved from separation from God for all eternity, and he's provided a way. So that's what we're doing. This is why we're doing this. We want to articulate this, make this understanding of what this system is, make it clear. We want you all, we want people to understand what we believe God's call is, how we are going to live in this present world, and to be able to say, when Jesus does come back, we did what you asked us to do. And that way, we shine the way he wants us to shine. So there you have it, friends. That's an outline of what's happening in the time that's unfolding in front of us, to see how things may unfold and how we are to respond, how we can go forward with faith, and we can shine the light of Christ in a world knowing that God loves us and that He is in control and that He loves the people around us, and we can show that love to them. At this period of time, as we go through this crisis period, where people are full of fear and they're paralyzed with fear, we as believers don't have to be paralyzed with fear, because we know the one who bought us, who loves us, and who's going to save us. And we can share that message with those around us so that they too can become part of God's family. That's what we're trying to do as we are practicing cultural diplomacy, shining the light of Christ, representing His kingdom to this lost and dying world. Stay tuned for more reports, more podcasts coming forward. We are looking very forward to what's happening in 2026. We're excited about what God is doing, and we hope that you are as well. And we hope that this helps you to be full of hope and to know how to instruct your children, your friends, the people around you, or maybe not instruct, at least advise and be there for them.